tweet your questions with the hashtag HS19. That goes for you too, if you have some questions for yourself. All right, folks, we're going to get right into this with Mr. White. You know I like to put people on the spot. We've talked before. Are you ready to announce a date and location for Bieber versus Tom Cruise in the Octagon? Are you ready for that?
I should have known this was going to be the first question. Yeah. Listen, if I can make that fight, I'll jump all over that fight. It'll be the biggest pay-per-view ever in the history of pay-per-view.
Look, TMZ said there were talks. I don't know how serious they were, but there was a conversation at some point, at some level. Is that true?
It is true. As crazy as that sounds, that is true.
What did it, just like, was it exploratory? Was it like, how much are we going to get for this? Like,
I don't want to use any names, but I was at home on a Sunday and I got a call with two big guys on the phone and they were telling me that, you know, this could possibly happen and this could be real. I'm like, there's no way that this is really going to happen. But if it does, call me back. I'm in.
Hypothetically, what could a purse be for a Bieber versus Cruz in the Octagon fight?
What's the first what?
What could the purse be? What could the
Oh my God. It would be massive. It would be massive. And if you, I mean, everybody laughed when we talked about this, so you've heard of it. I mean, just who wouldn't watch that? I mean, everybody would watch it. It's a complete train wreck, and I love it, and I'm in. You know what I mean? I'm in.
Well, if nothing else, having a massive music star, you challenge this iconic actor to a fight in the Octagon signals how far.
I can't even believe this is what we're talking about right now.
But it just sort of goes to show like how far the UFC has come. You got 239 coming up, Jones Santos, Holmes Nunes. You just opened the Ufc Apex. What the F is the Ufc Apex? What is that?
So at our headquarters in Las Vegas, you know, everything is going digital now, and I'm a big believer in digital. And we basically have our deal with ESPN, where we're on ESPN Plus, but we also have UFC Fight Pass, which is our digital streaming service. So I built this 130,000 square foot facility next door. It is a production facility where we can do anything from there. We can go live anywhere in the world. We can do anything. I can go live on ESPN from there. I can do anything. We can do post shows out of our place in Las Vegas, but it's also an arena where I can do fights. And I have a show called Dana White's Contender Series that we're doing live out of there now. But I picture a day where, as we continue to go global, when you think about Russia. Okay, we've been doing fights over in Russia. And let's say I want to put on a fight in Russia and, you know, I have some up and coming guys. I can go prime time in Russia on our streaming service live from the Apex. And yeah, then I can tear the place down and I can do a boxing match 2 hours later. And I can do a jiu-jitsu tournament 2 hours after that. And the list goes on and on. I see a day where I'm programming this building 24 hours a day.
What about a cooking show?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do a cooking show too. We can do anything. The answer is yes. I mean, I could do a cooking show out of there. I could do anything out of this building.
For context, because we have some younger people here, can you just sort of give a little bit of a picture of what these early days were like for the UFC? There wasn't an Apex when you got started. Yeah. There wasn't much of anything. Yeah. You know, where was this operation? Where was this sport when you first got into it?
Yeah, so when we first got involved in the sport, my partners and I, the Fertitta brothers, who own Station Casinos in Las Vegas, one of the largest gaming companies in the country, we started taking jiu-jitsu, submission fighting, and we became addicted to it. We fell in love with it. We started to meet some of the athletes, and we were blown away by how smart these guys were, how everybody had a different story. It wasn't the same, you know, boxing, everybody had the same old story. You know, if it wasn't for boxing, I'd be dead or in jail was pretty much everybody's story. And these guys were actually college graduates and, you know, had all these real cool backgrounds and where they were from and different martial arts, and we were blown away by it. And I started to manage some of the fighters. Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell were two of the guys, and I got in this huge contract battle over Tito Ortiz's contract, and through that I found out that the UFC was in trouble, and they were probably going out of business, and me and my partners ended up buying the company for $2 million, and we were huge fight fans, and we had this vision for the company, and you know, back then it wasn't allowed on pay-per-view, and our goal was to get it onto free TV, which people thought was impossible at that time. If you think about it, the UFC was not allowed on pay-per-view. You as an adult couldn't make the decision to put down your pay-per-view. Porn was on pay-per-view, okay? But the UFC wasn't. They wouldn't allow it. So that's how crazy it was in the uphill battle. Long story short, we ended up getting in like 40-something million dollars in the hole. And we ended up turning it around. We created a show called The Ultimate Fighter, got it on TV. Reality was big at this time, 2005. And the season was a huge success. And ever since then, the UFC has been a rocket ship.
So you paid $2 million for it in 2001. Did it turn out to be a good investment?
It worked out, yeah. It worked out.
WME IMG reportedly paid $4 billion for it in 2016. There's been some speculation that they may have paid a little bit too much for it. Tell me why UFC is worth $4 billion.
It's worth more than $4 billion now. I mean, just in the 3 years that they've owned it, it's worth way more. I mean, just our ESPN deal in the United States makes it worth more than $4 billion, and growing. We just opened the Apex in Las Vegas, like we were saying, but we also started opening performance institutes. And we just opened one in China that's 3 times bigger than the one in Las Vegas, which is massive. And I'm doing 3 more in Mexico, and I'm gonna do 1 in Puerto Rico over the next couple of years. And basically what we're doing is cultivating talent. I have a girl named Weili Zhang, who is Chinese, and she's fighting the Brazilian champion, Jessica Andrade, for the title in China. And there's this fascinating thing with human beings. Fighting works. I've always had this philosophy that fighting is the one sport that works everywhere, okay? So in the United States, the NFL is huge. We can all agree there's nothing bigger than the NFL. Everybody watches the Super Bowl. It's massive, right? But for years, they've been trying to break into other countries. Can't break into other countries because, first of all, kids don't grow up playing it there. They don't know the rules. They're never going to be invested in the teams. Kids from India don't care about the Patriots or, you know. Can somebody in here tell me who the greatest cricket player to ever live is? Other than this guy. Every time I say this is the first time somebody raised their hand and actually knew who the hell it was. The real answer to this question is, who gives a shit?
Oh, come on, come on.
And it's because we don't know the game. We didn't grow up playing it. We don't care. That's the real answer to the question. And it's the same way people in England and in India feel about, you know, sports that happen over in the United States. But the one sport that works everywhere is fighting. Fighting works everywhere. And, you know, it doesn't matter what color you are, what country you come from, what language you speak. We're all human beings, and fighting's in our DNA, man. We just get it and we like it. I can be laying in bed somewhere and I land on some Hispanic channel, right? And these 2 guys are fighting and the commentator's, I don't know what he's saying. I don't care what he's saying. This doesn't have to be explained to me. It's fighting, I get it, and I like it.
What language was that, by the way?
What?
What language were you just doing there? What
that was Spanish.
Okay.
And, you know, if you look at, how many know who Conor McGregor is? He's one of our biggest stars. Look at how this guy broke through globally. If you look at Ronda Rousey and what she did in the sport, Manny Pacquiao. Think about this. Bruce Lee, right? Bruce Lee died in the early 70s, and people still know who he is today. Kids know who Bruce Lee is. Me saying Bruce Lee right now isn't like, you know, who the hell is that guy? Guy died in the 70s, still one of the most famous people on earth. Because as human beings, we are fascinated by who the toughest people in the world are.
Yeah. Let's talk about.
I went on a rant there.
No,
sorry.
I appreciate it, and you're capable of that. I know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about stars and star making. You know, I think of like, you know, when you had WME and IMG come in, it's like, okay, everyone thought, okay, it's going to be Hollywood and they're going to like cross market these people and so on. You guys have certainly had some massive, you know, border crossing stars over the years. You know, Ronda Rousey comes to mind immediately, and Conor McGregor. The nature of the UFC and mixed martial arts is that stars and great fighters often lose. You know, they can't go undefeated their entire careers, and you know, they can fall out of the sport. Does that present problems for sort of the building of stars because you have that sort of volatility that anything can happen?
Yeah, you know, so my job is to go out and find young, up-and-coming talent that can potentially be a world champion someday. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, sometimes you're right, and just things can happen and people can lose. But one of the things that we've done a good job at in building this sport is when somebody loses, it's almost accepted in this sport because there's so many different ways to win and lose that anybody could lose on any given day, and we always put the absolute best against the best.
Yeah.
So when you're a guy like John Jones, who goes undefeated his entire career, it actually really means something.
Yeah.
Boxing got to a point where you could build a guy up and give him all these fights, and the guy's 32-0 with 30 knockouts, but he didn't fight all the right people.
And that's a business proposition. They're saying, okay, look, Dana, you know, Ronda is packing the house. Let's just, you know, run this thing as long as we possibly can and put her up against tomato cans forever. But that's just not what the ethos of UFC
is. Not what we do. Yeah, and the problem is you can lose to what somebody considers a tomato can, and it hurts you worse than losing to one of the best in the world.
Sure. McGregor is a phenomenon, you know, went from 0 to 100. He's as charismatic outside the ring as he is in it. But I have to say, I watch the sport now and I see his influence being very pervasive in the way that guys are sort of challenging and calling out each other, especially after victories in the Octagon. And the volume has been sort of raised and everyone's kind of trying to be a little bit like Conor. Is that possible? Do you think there are too many people out there trying to steal the playbook from him?
It happens, you know, when you see a guy who's as successful as he is, you know, and he's fun. I mean, you see the guy's fun and everything else, and you start thinking, well, maybe if I act like this, I'll have what he has. There's only one Conor McGregor. Yeah. And people will always ask me, do you think you'll ever find another Conor McGregor? Are you trying to find another Conor? There'll never be another Conor McGregor. Yeah. But there will be somebody else who's different in their own way and will become a star in their own way.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but Conor gets into trouble sometimes.
He does.
And he made some comments on Twitter in the last couple of years, especially around his nemesis Khabib, that, you know, were pretty ugly stuff. You know, kind of thing that would get you in trouble if you were in another league. Were there points where you were thinking, and you have come out and said that...
Would get you in trouble in just about any other business on earth.
For sure. Yeah. And you have said that what he, you know, said specifically was unacceptable, but did you ever consider sanctioning him somehow because of that?
So one thing you have to always remember is this is the fight business. And, you know, I went through this, you know, we had when this whole thing was going down, the Nevada State Athletic Commission, which is the government, started to get involved in this thing and saying we might have to, you know, we might have to start slapping people with fines and suspensions and things like this for saying things. So wait a minute. So these guys can go into the octagon, kick, punch, knee, elbow, slam, and knock each other out, submit each other, but they can't say mean things to each other? How does that work? This is the fight business. And you know, I don't know. I don't want to be around when that day comes, when you start telling people what they can and can't say.
Between saying, like, you know, so-and-so is a, you know, not a real champion, and then going after somebody's ethnicity or religion and so on. And that seemed to be where people really started to draw the line with what he was saying.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
People say mean things.
Yeah.
It's life. It is what it is.
Not on the internet, though.
Huh? No, not on the internet. Yeah, we live in probably the most vicious time ever in human history where anybody can say anything behind a fake, you know, account. But
you mentioned Rousey, and you mentioned some of your women fighters, and you famously poo-pooed many years ago the idea of women in the octagon.
Right.
And then Rousey comes in and becomes this cultural phenomenon, and she's gone away, and yet women fighters remain headliners on many cards, including 239 coming up. Why do you think women fighters have continued to be such a force for the sport?
Because they're good.
Yeah.
Because they're really good. And, you know, one of the things that you have to remember, I completely own up to saying women would never fight in the Octagon. But like I told you guys earlier, you got to remember, at this time, I was trying to get people to accept the men fighting in the Octagon. You know what I mean? It wasn't allowed on pay-per-view, right. Wasn't allowed on TV. And I'm like, oh, gee, women fighting, you know. There's always going to be this, it's changing rapidly, but there's always going to be this, I don't know, the chauvinist side to men, that men don't want to see women getting, you know, pinned up against the cage and hit with elbows and getting cut and things like that. So I thought. Yeah, it's very popular now. And the difference is, the reason that the women's MMA has taken off and it's so big is because these women are legit, really good, very technical, and it's amazing. I never saw it coming. And if you think about, in all other sports, what they talk about is, you know, if women play golf, they hit from shorter tees. If right. You know, there's always some excuse about women playing in sports. Right. It's absolutely even playing field in the UFC. They fight the same style, they fight everything, and even the pay. At the time that Ronda Rousey was here, she was the highest paid fighter in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in a funny way, or in a legit way, the UFC is now one of the most gender equal sports in the world.
100%.
Are you a feminist, Dana White?
It's right.
Yeah.
These women are incredible. They're what's crazy is too, when you think about the empowerment of women right now, you know, for most men, this is hard to wrap their head around, and many of you in here today are going to be like, oh, yeah, right. A woman will kick your ass these days, man. It's not like it was 30 years ago. You know, when I grew up, they played with dolls and we played sports, and not anymore. I literally just put out a post recently in the last 6 to 8 months. Cute little Brazilian girl that fights for us, okay? Poliana Viana. She's in Brazil. Beautiful girl. If you saw her, you know, tiny. Guy tried to rob her in Brazil. Came up and tried to rob her. You should see the picture of him. I'm not even kidding. You'd be like, holy shit. He looked like he got hit by a bus, all right? Cute little Brazilian girl did that to him.
You mentioned Rousey being the highest paid athlete in the sport at the time that she was the champion. What do you think of the pay dispute that's been happening with women's soccer in the United States? Where have you know about this, how the women are paid considerably less than the men's national team, and they're fighting in court to try to equal it out?
Yeah, I heard a little bit about it. Yeah. I don't follow a lot of other stuff, but yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I hear that all the time with you know, soccer and basketball and tennis and golf, and yeah.
But do you find that there's a real, you know, that every sport should consider the economic viability of female athletes, and that this is not something they should just do for, I mean, there's real business in this?
Yeah, obviously if whatever sport it is and the women are bringing in the money, yeah, they should get paid.
These are pretty wild days in the combat sports business. In addition to the fact that you have this new deal with ESPN, we have, you know, new players like DAZN is getting in there. It seems like every boxer is getting a DAZN deal every time we turn around. You know, things are fast and furious. What I can't parse, and I'm curious what your take is this a function of it's easier to line up fighters and fights as opposed to like going out and getting the NBA, and that's what, you know, is driving some of this? Or is there in fact some sort of renaissance happening with boxing? I mean, you guys are obviously going strong. Is there something to that?
No, what I think it is when you get into these paywall platforms, the no-brainer, the low-hanging fruit are the ones that traditionally people have paid for. So it's true, though. I mean, people who are fight fans are used to paying for fights. You buy it on pay-per-view. You know, you have to, you know, go through your cable provider and do this. I think people are used to it, and I think that that's the easiest one. As big as the NFL is, as big as Major League Baseball is, and the NBA, people aren't used to paying for that. Yeah. It's free. Yeah.
What do you think of the Tiger Phil pay-per-view thing that he tried?
You know, I hate golf. Okay, I watched it. Yeah. I watched it. Yeah, I have a place up in Maine, and I go up there, and it's where I really go chill out and relax. And I literally bought the pay-per-view and watched it that night. and I actually thought it was exciting and entertaining.
Wow. You
Yeah.
might have been the only one who thought it was
Really?
exciting.
I don't know about that because it did really well. You know, they had some hiccups and
They did
lost
have
some
some
money,
hiccups.
but it did really well. So they got something there.
Yeah. I want to ask you
He
about.
ain't buying it. Yeah.
Well, I just think that like golf chat isn't that exciting, you know.
But that game was exciting.
They're icons. I get
You
it.
didn't think so, huh? All right.
All right, labor. We keep hearing that there's possibilities of the fighters organizing, trying to form a labor union. UFC's position, as I understand it, is that the fighters are independent contractors. They're not technically employees. So
Right.
the idea of forming an employees union that precludes them from doing that. At the same time, you've made comments recently about saying, look, I've got to negotiate with somebody. If it's a person or if it's a
Right.
union, that the union's the fighter's problem. How should we read that? Are you softening on that idea?
No, it's not that I'm. Listen, first of all, our fighters, majority of them. When I say a majority of them, pretty much all of them, they don't want the money public. They don't want their money out in the public like all other sports do, and so they ask us not to do that. Then you have guys. When you got a guy like Conor McGregor, I mean, he says it. He's pretty adamant about it. I'm the guy that's bringing in all this money.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that's doing this. Sure, he wants to lift everybody up, and everybody else makes some money too. But fighting is the one sport that, not everybody, very, very few people become world champions.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to become a huge superstar either. And when you do, when you are the champion and you are the big star, you share in the profits. You're our partner on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
You're an independent contractor, and the guys who, but the other thing that we do is we spread the money out throughout the whole sport. People will talk about what boxing makes. You hear what Floyd makes and all this stuff. There's like 5 guys that make that kind of money.
Yeah.
There's a handful of guys that make that money. If you look at what we do, the money is spread out. You're never going to have a perfect scenario. Who in here is making way too much money? Raise your hand.
No, sure.
Yeah. Man.
Right.
No, that's it. There's never gonna be a situation where no matter what you're paying, everybody's like, yeah, we're good.
Of course.
Perfect.
With or without
Nailed it.
with or without a union or labor agreement, we are in an era where leagues and governing bodies in virtually every sport, they're expected to care about athlete well-being, not just during the course of a career, but long-term, both physical and mental. You're in a tough sport, a tough game. People get hit in the head. Are there ways in which you are tweaking the sport or the way that athletes and fighters train or prepare that might mitigate some of these issues?
When I tell you that we have changed the game in every way, shape, and form, I'm talking about this performance institute that we're building. We're building these things all over the place. The fighters come into our place that are under contract with us, and they eat for free. Their meals are all done. We have a restaurant there. They eat for free. They're evaluated by the top, experts in the world with nutrition and, telling these guys the proper way to work out and to train, strength and conditioning. We have physical therapy there that's all free to them. And we also do brain studies. Until this whole thing unraveled with the NFL, there wasn't a lot of research out there about, traumatic brain injury and, a lot of this stuff from the war too. We learned a lot from that. And, we fund these things nonstop to try to get better at that. But the difference between, if you look at what happened in the NFL, like everybody believed at one point, well, we wear helmets and we wear pads and, you thought that was safe. Nobody's ever thought that getting punched in the face is good for you.
Yeah.
Okay? And everybody knows these risks going in. But we've been working and spending lots of money to try to minimize, or at least educate ourselves more on how to prevent these type of things.
What's the end game for you? You got the bag, Dana White. You got the money.
No,
you don't need this.
Yeah, and I know everybody who has money always says this. It's not about the money. But it was really never about the money for me, And this is what I love to do. This is what I'm still really passionate about. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I believe that as we go into this digital world, right? Let me put it to you this way. So our biggest fight that we've ever done is Mayweather-McGregor, right? It's the biggest pay-per-view ever. Another company out there will dispute that, but they're liars. I'm telling the truth. So our pay-per-view was the biggest pay-per-view ever. And it was around 4.3 million in that ballpark, right?
Viewers.
Huh?
Viewers. 4.3 million.
4.3 million
Right.
purchasers.
Right.
Purchased. And so viewers, it's way more bigger than that.
Right.
More viewers, but 4.3 million pay-per-view buys.
Right.
And if you think about, I always used to dream about a day where if you put on the right fight in the right place with the right people, what's your ceiling, right? Now the whole world can watch it. You're talking 7 billion people around the world. And everybody can watch it at the same time on the same platform without having a million different television deals, right? What's the ceiling? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm excited to find out. And that's the type of stuff that fires me up now. Growing the sport in all these different countries, cultivating talent, and putting on massive fights that the whole world is watching at the same time.
Politics, ever? There's a Senate seat in Massachusetts, 2020. Ed Markey is running as Democrat incumbent. There's an open Republican slot. Would you ever consider running for office?
Oh, Jesus, no, God. Oh, God. I didn't know what you were asking me there. I thought you were going somewhere else.
Senator White.
Yeah.
No,
God, no.
You want to own an NFL team?
Well, my old partners, the Fertitta brothers, are huge football and NFL guys, and yes, we'll probably end up buying an NFL team together.
Could you root against your Patriots?
No. Hopefully we buy the Patriots. I don't know. That'll be a real unique situation. I would imagine that, yes, if we buy a team, I would be rooting for my team over any other team.
All right. We have time for some questions, and I think they're going to pop up on the screen or something like that. All right. Dana White, do you think commissioners and other sports biz leaders should be active on Twitter as you are?
I wouldn't recommend being like me on Twitter, no, but yeah, listen, we come from very humble beginnings in the UFC, and I always had this fascination by celebrities, whether they're athletes or movie stars or whatever, and why they wouldn't want to talk to their fans and why they wouldn't want to communicate with the people who love what you do as much as you do. Yeah. And I love it, and yeah, I'm not going to change.
Well, it sort of dovetails really nicely with what UFC is, right? In that, what's the most valued quantity now on social media? Authenticity, being real, right? Yeah. And like, that's kind of what you guys have been about, right?
Well, thank you.
Right? I mean, for better and for worse.
I think so, but yeah, thanks.
Do a fighter's personal endorsements ever interfere with UFC corporate partnerships?
No, I think we pretty much figured that out. We've got that figured out where, you know, like other sports, you know, they can, whatever they want to do outside the octagon, they do. And, you know, and there's times when we try to help and you know, do what we can to support them and help them make more money.
Is Proper 12 any good?
I like it. Listen, I'm not a whiskey guy. I don't like the taste of whiskey. I like his whiskey better than most.
All right.
Yeah.
Got something else coming up? I do have a couple questions about just sort of other things that are out there in the world. If I could make you commissioner, Dana White, if I could make you the commissioner of Major League Baseball for a year. Come on.
I don't want it.
It's required. It's required. You littered in public, and this is the sentence. You have to be Major League Baseball commissioner. Give me like a couple of things you would do to tweak baseball to get people, younger people, excited about it.
That's a good question. Yeah, first of all, I mean, I think they were the last ones to dive into social media. I think they held out the longest.
Although their, you know, MLB, you know, streaming services has been a massive success.
Yeah. I think streaming is the future. I think it's going to be big. Yeah. It's the future. I don't know.
Five-inning games?
I don't, huh?
5-inning games? Let the fans pitch? Stuff like that.
Listen, you just said how well the streaming service is doing for baseball. I think they're doing all right. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. That's a hard one for me.
All right. Kevin Belby, who is certified or verified, wants to know, how has the ESPN deal impacted the UFC so far, and what impact will it have going forward?
It's funny because we all know, you know, ESPN is the biggest, baddest, you know, network in sports worldwide. And when you come from where I came from and you build, an organization the way that I have, your dream is to eventually be on ESPN, be covered by ESPN and all that stuff. But you don't realize how big and how powerful these guys really are until you're in business with them. When we were just talking about, the business was that we sold for $4 billion. Where does it go from there? The answer is this. It's gone just like this. We've been in business with these guys for 6 months. Every aspect of our business is up since we started with these guys 6 months ago. We're going to break the record this year for ticket sales for the year all time. And Conor hasn't fought, neither has Ronda. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wait, are you saying Ronda could come back?
No, I'm just saying, right. If you take the two biggest stars that in those years
right.
that we were selling tickets,
gotcha.
Those two haven't fought. We're
right.
going to break the record this
right.
year for ticket sales.
Right.
Ratings are through the roof. International pay-per-view is bigger. Everything, our whole business is up since we started with ESPN.
What are your thoughts on esports, Dana White?
I don't know enough about it. I don't really know. Listen, man, I live in a box. I live in a fighting box, and that's all I care about. It's all I focus on.
Are there some esports in your Apex Death Star you built out there in Vegas? You got esports in there?
No.
No esports?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to say no, but I don't know enough about esports to speak about it.
A last audience question. What's the future and potential, and this applies to every sport that's out there, what's the potential of betting on UFC fights? Is it betting legal in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can bet on the fights. The fights do well, and listen, I'm a big gambler. I love to gamble, and I think that gambling makes all sports more exciting. You know what I mean? Even golf, okay? Even golf. I just think that if you're at an arena, right, and you're there to see whatever it is that night, and you can actually walk up onto the concourse and make bets, I think that's awesome. Yeah. I love it.
Dana White, everybody, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Thank you, sir.